The horror stories set in cemeteries that you're about to see will show you how silence and darkness can hide the most terrifying secrets. Prepare for a journey through places where fear and mystery lurk around every corner. Like the story you're about to see, where a simple night run in a quiet neighborhood turns into an unexpected nightmare when a young man, alone and lost in thought, encounters a strange girl in front of a deserted cemetery. But before we begin the story, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any chilling tales. It was a chilly autumn night, the kind where the wind seems to cut through your skin. As usual, I had the habit of running at night to clear my head after a long day of studying at the university. Lancaster has this charm, especially at night, when the streets are empty and all you hear is the sound of your own footsteps. I had just left my apartment and was heading towards a more secluded residential area. Nothing out of the ordinary, until I passed by Williamson Park. Now, the park at night is beautiful, but it gives you a certain chill. Tall trees, long shadows, and at the end of the path, a huge, gloomy cemetery. The kind of cemetery that seems to watch you back as you look at it. I don't know if it was the wind, the rustling of dry leaves, or the full moon that made everything so strange. Either way, I kept my focus on my run, trying not to look too closely. When I reached the cemetery gate, something made me stop. Out of the corner of my eye, something moved. It was a girl. She was standing there alone, her gaze fixed on the cemetery gate, as if waiting for someone or something. The strangest part, and what made me pause, was that she was wearing a thin, light fabric dress completely out of place on such a cold night. The girl was shivering, visibly scared, and it seemed like she might disappear into the darkness at any moment. My instinct was to ask if she was okay, but before I could, she looked at me with an expression of desperation, as if she needed help, but was also afraid to ask. I didn't know what to do, so hesitantly, I asked if she needed anything. She looked at me like I was the only person who could help. "Please help me," she said, her voice almost a whisper. She looked into the dark cemetery, and seeing that dense darkness gave me a chill. I didn't know what to expect, but it wasn't this. I asked if she wanted me to call the police, which seemed like the most sensible thing to do, and that's when things started to get weird. Half unsure of what to do, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, trying to stay calm. The girl remained there, her eyes fixed on the cemetery's darkness, as if something inside was calling to her. I could feel her panic, but something wasn't right. What was she seeing there? Why was she staring so intently at that gloomy place? I barely heard the call connect when she suddenly turned to face me, her expression not what I expected. Her face, which had been disoriented and full of fear, was now aggressive. The way she looked at me was so intense, so charged with a strange energy, that my heart raced. She raised her hand as if to stop me from speaking. "No, don't call anyone! You don't understand! Don't call the police!" she shouted, her voice now strong, almost angry. The change was so sudden, so abrupt, that I was left completely speechless. Fear gripped me, but there was something more. Something I couldn't identify, as if she was forcing me to listen and follow her words. "You can't call. They can't know," she continued, her eyes gleaming with a strange intensity. I swallowed hard, my hand still holding the phone. I didn't know whether to continue the call or run away. But before I could decide, she turned her back and, without another word, started running back towards the cemetery. She didn't look back, just dashed into the darkness, disappearing into the night as if she were part of it. I stood there, heart pounding, unable to believe what had just happened. The girl seemed to be running from something, but what? And why was she suddenly so desperate to stop me from calling the police? I could only stare at the cemetery gate where she had vanished. I didn't know what to do. What did it all mean? All I knew at that moment was that I wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. I stood frozen, looking at the spot where the girl had disappeared. The cemetery's darkness seemed to swallow everything, as if it had consumed the girl whole. I tried to process what had happened, but my mind couldn't keep up. How had she run into that place without fear, as if she knew what awaited her inside? What had I just witnessed? And more importantly, What was inside that cemetery? Part of me wanted to go back, investigate, understand. But another part of me was completely terrified. Fear began to consume me, and I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. My breathing was heavy, my body tense, and I felt like any noise from the cemetery could be the last thing I heard. Without a second thought, I pocketed my phone and ran as fast as I could. I didn't look back, didn't stop for anything. My legs seemed tireless, as if something was pushing me, forcing me to get out of there. I just wanted to be far away from that place. I ran and ran without stopping. The wind cut across my face, and the city lights grew closer, but the panic didn't leave me. I wanted to forget it all, leave behind the image of that girl and the mystery of that cemetery. But the questions kept pounding in my head. What did she want? What was happening in that cemetery? And why did that strange aura linger there, as if the place itself was alive? I never ran alone at night again after that experience. That cemetery, with its ancient headstones and twisted trees, had something deeply unsettling about it. It was beautiful, but there was something wrong with it, as if it hid secrets that shouldn't be revealed. Every time I passed by it during the day, even with the sun shining, I felt a chill down my spine. Something about that night had broken something inside me. Now every time I look at that cemetery, I feel both drawn to and repelled by it. Something inside calls to me, but I know I will never, ever have the courage to find out what it is. Whatever it is, it's still there, hidden in the darkness, waiting. What a horror. What did you think of the story? What would you do if something similar happened to you? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. There are moments when curiosity leads us to places we should never go. Sometimes, what seems like a small mystery hides something much more sinister, and the consequences can be darker than we imagine. Like the story you're about to see, where two people seeking a moment of peace are drawn into a strange and terrifying enigma. What starts as a quiet night in a cemetery soon turns into something unexpected, when a mysterious bonfire and an unsettling silhouette confront them with a terror that defies logic. It was a Friday night, and Anna and I were doing our ritual. You know, the kind of thing you do to relax, away from everything and everyone. Well, we loved going to the cemetery. Don't be alarmed. It's not like we were morbid or enjoyed creepy things. It's just that the place had a certain peace, a calmness. It was good for talking, venting, and forgetting the pressures of daily life. And of course, we always went at night, when the silence was total, and the darkness felt like a warm embrace. So, on that particular night, we were there, chilling under a crystal-clear sky with no clouds, when something caught our attention. At the top of the hill, right in the middle of the cemetery, a bonfire was burning, smoke rising, flames dancing in the darkness. We quietly watched. It was a bit strange, but I thought, it must be some college kids having a party like they always do around here. They made a bonfire, were drinking something, and that was it. No big deal, right? But man, the smell coming from that bonfire was awful. It was something sour, like burning meat, but mixed with something rotten. And the more we tried to ignore it, the stronger it got. I felt my stomach churn, and Anna, who usually wasn't bothered by the smell of fire, also seemed restless. We stood there in silence, trying to figure out what was happening. I didn't know what to do. After a while, Anna suggested, "Let's get out of here, okay? It's enough." I agreed without much thought. I wasn't feeling good there, but at the same time, I didn't want to seem scared. So we left, but a bad feeling lingered in the air. We were almost out when something deep down told me there was more to it, like a strange feeling, as if we were leaving something behind. Anna thought the same because after a while she looked at me hesitantly and said, "Do you think we should check out that bonfire? What if it's some kind of, I don't know, weird gathering or something?" I gave a nervous smile and shook my head. "No, Anna, I think we should just leave." But curiosity was eating us up. With every step we took toward the car, our desire to investigate grew. But something told me not to go any further. The feeling was so strong that even my skin was tingling. And just as we were almost at the exit, almost breathing sighs of relief and feeling safe. It happened. A silhouette appeared by the bonfire. At first, I thought it was just an effect of the smoke, something missing in the heat of the flames. But it wasn't. It was a person. A tall figure with a strange posture, almost motionless, and the eyes. I couldn't see clearly, but it seemed like they were looking directly at us. Not at the bonfire, not at the ground, at us. As if waiting for us to make a move or deciding what to do. I froze. The blood in my body turned cold, and for a second, my mind went blank. Anna, who was almost turning away, froze too. That unexplainable fear took over everything. It was like the air around us had become dense, as if we had stepped into a nightmare. I don't know what it was exactly, but something inside me screamed, "Run!" I don't know who screamed first, but we didn't need words. We dashed to the car, and as soon as we got in, I managed to start the engine and accelerate. But it was all so fast that I almost spun the car out in my haste. I put it in reverse and started to get out of there like my life depended on it. We didn't look back. We didn't hear anything else. The world went silent except for the sound of the engine and our heavy breathing. I knew that if I looked back, whatever we saw would follow us, and I wasn't about to test that. And so we left. But the fear was still there, inside me like a shadow I couldn't shake off. The next day I tried to go about my day normally. I tried to forget what happened, but it was impossible. That image of the silhouette, the eyes watching me, it was consuming me from the inside. I kept wondering what it could have been, what had happened there the night before. But the answers didn't come. That's when my mom, in a casual conversation over breakfast, dropped a bombshell. We were talking about nothing in particular when she said, as if it were nothing, "Did you see the news last night? A woman was kidnapped and murdered. They found her body in the cemetery, in a bonfire." She paused, looking at me, and then spoke in a more serious tone. "It seems like it was a really gruesome story, something very macabre. The police are still investigating." I froze. The coffee cup almost slipped from my hand, and the first thing I thought was, It can't be the same place. But then, my heart sank. I remember feeling such a strong chill that I rubbed my arms as if trying to protect myself from something invisible. "Oh, Mom, but who was that woman? How did it happen?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, but I felt a mix of fear and anger growing inside me. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to hear more details, but I couldn't stop asking. My mom continued, not noticing the panic starting to take over me. "The police are still investigating, but they said she was probably kidnapped before being taken there. The body was found burned, like some kind of ritual." I couldn't listen anymore. It hit me. I realized what had happened. That silhouette by the bonfire. The person who seemed to be watching us. It was as if something there was waiting for someone, or worse, watching what was happening. And if we had stayed longer, if we had gotten closer, I didn't want to think about it, but I couldn't ignore it. At that moment, my mind exploded with possibilities. What else could we have seen? What would have happened if we had gone to investigate, if we had been curious? What else was hidden there that night? And the worst part, what had that gaze been? The feeling that someone was watching us, as if seeing us as part of something much bigger and more terrible. After that day, I never set foot in that cemetery again. Anna and I decided, without even needing to say it, that the place wasn't for us. The fear was stronger than any desire to go back. Something was very wrong there, and we weren't going to risk finding out what. What a scare. Sometimes the legends we hear as kids end up being more real than we'd like to believe. Like in the story you're about to see, where a simple visit to a cemetery leads to something much more intense and unsettling. What starts as harmless curiosity soon takes on proportions that defy understanding, leaving behind a trail of mystery and a sense that something much bigger and more dangerous is lurking. But before we continue with the story, if you've made it this far, it means you're enjoying our stories, so go ahead and like the video to let YouTube know you like this kind of content and don't miss any more horror stories. I will never forget the first time I entered Greenwood Cemetery. I had heard stories, of course, who hasn't? They say it's one of the most haunted cemeteries in the Midwest. It has that vibe where the ground feels heavy, as if the souls can't rest in peace. The problem is when you grow up with someone like my sister Celia, those stories aren't just stories. They're an invitation. And Celia always had a crazy curiosity for the paranormal. From a young age, she seemed to have a gift for attracting things beyond our understanding. We grew up with our grandparents, who were very religious and always told us to avoid anything related to the supernatural. But over time, Celia became more different. After some losses in her life, she started to feel that what we called negativity wasn't just in our heads. She started visiting cemeteries. And the craziest part? Greenwood was her favorite place to go. Always alone, with a group of friends or even with Brutus, her dog, who seemed more like a bodyguard than a pet. That night, Celia invited me to go with her. There was something in the air, a strange energy, and she was all excited. When we arrived, the cemetery seemed darker than I remembered, as if it had grown, as if the trees and headstones were stretching out of the ground, waiting for something. The place was silent, but at the same time, it seemed to be murmuring something, whispering under our noses. Celia was in ecstasy, as if the place was her home, and asked her friends to be quiet. "Let's knock on the pole," she said. And of course, I was there to support her. They knocked on the iron pole, the sound of metal echoing in the cold night, and said something like, "If you're here, show us a sign." I thought it was all a bit forced, but before I could make any comment, something strange happened. Knocks. Loud knocks, as if someone was hammering something on the ground. There was no one around, but the sound continued, echoing between the trees. The tension in the air became heavy. We could almost feel the presence of something. I quickened my pace to get closer to Celia, and that's when we saw them. Two dark figures fast running down the gravel road. They moved in silence, like shadows that hadn't fully materialized yet. Brutus, who was always calm, started growling low, as if sensing something we couldn't see. That night marked the beginning of something much bigger than any of us imagined. Those knocks in the air were still echoing in my head when we saw the shadows. Those two figures running down the gravel road. The first thing I thought was that they were just animals, maybe a deer or a pack of coyotes. But no. They didn't move like animals. They didn't make the sound of paws hitting the ground. It was more like they were gliding without a sound, like ghosts. I couldn't understand it, and Celia, as always, seemed more excited than scared. She turned to her friends, her eyes shining with a mix of fear and fascination, and said, "You saw that too, right?" Everyone was pale, but no one knew what to say. Brutus, who was usually the bravest dog, was completely frozen, his body tense, his fur standing on end, but he didn't bark, didn't move. He just stared at those shadows disappearing into the trees. After that, everyone was quiet. Even the atmosphere seemed thicker. When we got back to town, we started looking for any story, any reference to figures like the ones we saw. And to our surprise, we found something. Several other people had seen what they called ghostly dogs. People passing by Greenwood, travelers who didn't even know the history of the place, were reporting the same dark shadows running down the gravel road, disappearing into the trees. They said that when they saw them, they felt a chill down their spine and a shiver that wouldn't go away, as if something was approaching, but at the same time, something had already gone. This only made the mystery grow. But as you know, fear and curiosity feed each other. So, a week later, Celia, with that smile she only has when she's about to do something she knows will go wrong, invited me again. "Let's go back to the cemetery," she said. "Let's see how far these spirits will hide." She was challenging the place, provoking, like someone who wants to test how far fear can go. We went back, and this time the atmosphere was different. Celia had that defiant look, as if she was saying to the spirits, "I'm not afraid of you." She turned to the others and said, laughing, "This place is just a cemetery, guys. What's so scary about it? Headstones, trees, it's all just history." Of course, no one really agreed with her, but there we were, in the middle of the darkness, knocking on the old iron pole again. This time we didn't knock with much respect, you know? It was like we were doing the opposite of what was expected, like we were challenging something we didn't even understand. And that's when everything changed. Suddenly, a scream. But not just any scream. It was so loud, so shrill, that it seemed to cut through the air. It didn't sound human. It was like a woman was being torn apart or something worse. The sound stretched on for too long, as if it was being swallowed by the earth itself. My body froze. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I saw Celia, her eyes wide, looking around, trying to figure out where the sound was coming from. Her friends started to back away, their faces pale, their legs shaking, but no one knew what to do. When I finally managed to move, the only thing I wanted was to get out of there, to run anywhere away from that hellish scream. And we did. We ran to the cars without looking back, with the feeling that something was following us. But when we got in the cars and looked at the trees, something else happened. There, among the shadows of the trees, we saw lights flickering. Lights that shouldn't have been there. They weren't car headlights, they weren't flashlights. They were like small flames flickering on and off, disappearing quickly, as if they were hiding. I knew that wasn't natural. It wasn't anything good. And that was just the beginning. What happened afterward at Celia's house was the kind of thing you don't even want to remember. But that's another story. I don't know what was more terrifying that night, the scream that echoed through the sky or the flickering lights among the trees. But one thing is for sure, it marked our lives forever. The sound was impossible to describe. It didn't sound human. It was a mix of agony and rage, as if someone was being torn apart, as if the sky itself was being ripped in half. And it continued, stretching through the night, as if the very air was crying out in pain. It was enough to make anyone lose their courage. No one said a word, but everyone started running toward the cars. I didn't look back. I knew something was there, something watching us. When we finally reached the cars, I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking I had left that nightmare behind. But then, the lights. Those strange, flickering lights in the trees. They weren't like flashlights or any normal light. They flickered, as if they were hiding and revealing themselves. They weren't from any source we knew. They were small, like will-o'-the-wisps, but they moved in a way that made you doubt your own sanity. I had the feeling that these lights weren't there to illuminate us, but to remind us that what we saw that night wasn't going to stay behind. And with that thought, we just started the cars and drove away. But it didn't end there. When we got to Celia's house, something was already different. The atmosphere was heavy. I knew she felt it too, but she didn't say anything. We sat on the couch trying to process what had happened until the sounds started. First, it was a scratching. It was low, like something was dragging its claws across the floor or the wall. Celia looked at me without saying a word, but the expression on her face was of someone who already knew what it was. She wasn't scared. She seemed more resigned. When we went to the bathroom, the sound intensified, now louder, clearer. It was as if something was trying to get in or dragging itself through the house. That's when I heard it. In the silence of the house, in the middle of my shower, someone whispered my name. I froze. It wasn't my voice. It wasn't anyone in the house. It was something different, something distant and close at the same time. Celia heard it too. She was in shock, but at the same time, she seemed like she had been expecting it. The negativity fed the entity, she said, her voice lower than usual. She believed it, believed that whatever that thing was, she had attracted it. She felt that all her pain, anger, and frustration had created an opening for what was manifesting there. I don't know if she wanted to blame herself, but she really seemed to believe she had called it. In the days that followed, the events worsened. At night, the doors would slam shut on their own. The scratching on the walls became more frequent, and sometimes the lights in the house would flicker, as if something was interfering with the electricity. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just a physical effect. I felt a presence. It wasn't visible, but it was there, watching us. That's when Celia decided she needed to reconnect with her faith. She had always been religious, but this kind of thing, this supernatural side, pushed her away. She was trying to reconnect, to pray, to meditate, anything that would help. And over time, it seemed to work. The sound started to fade, the lights calmed down. It was as if that presence for some reason had moved away. She never talked much about it afterward. She only said once, very seriously, "I learned that what you feed inside you can become real in ways you can't imagine." After that, life went on. But to this day, I can't stop thinking about what happened that night at Greenwood. I don't know what that entity was or what we really saw. But one thing is for sure. There's something in that cemetery. Something that doesn't want to be discovered. Something that won't let people rest. And sometimes, I still wonder if we really escaped or if we're still being followed. Thank you for watching this far. Which story did you like the most? And which one did you like the least? Before you go, remember to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to help the channel grow and not miss any horror stories.